Hey, my name is Caleb Turner. I was 37 that summer, and I worked maintenance for the Willow Creek County Fairgrounds, which meant I knew every loose board, every stubborn faucet, every outlet that sparked if you looked at it wrong. Most mornings, I arrived before the sun burned the dew off the grass. I unlocked the exhibition hall, checked the livestock gates, tightened bolts on folding tables, and made sure the string lights over the gravel path still had enough life in them to make the place look warmer than it was. I ate breakfast alone behind the hall, on a chipped wooden bench where the paint had given up years earlier. Coffee in a paper cup, biscuit wrapped in a napkin, my radio beside me, mostly quiet. There was a folding chair in my work shed, an old brown one with my name written underneath in black marker. I kept it there for breaks, though I rarely sat long. Chairs were for people with someone waiting nearby. I was the man folks called when something leaked, cracked, jammed, or quit shining. That was how I thought of myself back then. Useful, dependable. Easy to forget once the problem was fixed. Then Lydia Bell came walking through the vendor gate, carrying 3 quilts stacked higher than her chin, and for the first time all summer, I forgot to check the lights. Her booth was the faded blue one near the middle bend of the gravel path, between the honey stand and the old lemonade trailer. Booth 14. Everybody in town knew it, though most people called it Earl Bell's old spot, because Earl had been her husband, and because small towns sometimes remember a woman through the man who once stood beside her. Lydia did not ask for help at first. She set the quilts on a folding table, smoothed the top one with both hands, and looked at the booth number card clipped to the post. Then she looked at the new banner rolled on the ground beside it. Bright red, commercial printing, big letters for a company that sold patio spas and outdoor kitchens. Marlene Cross, chair of the fair committee, stood near the booth with a clipboard pressed to her chest like a shield. "Lydia," she said, "I was going to call you." Lydia's shoulders stayed straight. "I sent in my payment in April." "I know, and we appreciate your years here. But the fair has to bring in fresh energy. Larger vendors help cover costs." Lydia touched the booth post, the one with old nail holes from years of hanging quilt samples. "This has been my place for 11 years. Marlene smiled, the kind of smile that tried to end a conversation politely before it began. "We're offering you a table inside the community tent. That tent has no wall space. You can fold your quilts." I stood 20 feet away, with a toolbox in my hand, pretending I was checking a loose plank. Lydia did not cry. That was what I noticed. Her face tightened, but she did not let it break. She only held that booth card between her fingers like it was something alive. The spa vendor's helper dragged the red banner closer. Lydia turned slightly away from Marlene, just enough that only I heard her. "Please don't let them give my booth to someone else," she whispered. There are moments when a man knows stepping forward might make things worse. I knew Marlene did not like surprises. I knew Lydia did not know me except as the maintenance man who fixed sinks and replaced bulbs. Still, I walked over. Marlene looked annoyed before I opened my mouth. "Caleb, we're handling vendor placement." "I can see that." Lydia looked at me then. Her eyes were tired, but not weak. I liked that distinction right away. I set my toolbox beside the blue post and nodded toward the booth. "Frame's loose, lights are half dead, back rail needs bracing." Marlene frowned. "That booth may not be used." I looked at Lydia, not Marlene. "Do you still want to fight for it?" Lydia swallowed. Her hand tightened around the booth card. Yes. Then I'll save your seat. It came out plain. No grand speech. I meant I would keep the booth from being torn apart before she had a chance to speak. I meant I would not let a shiny banner erase 11 years of work before breakfast. I meant there was still a place for her if she chose to stand in it. Marlene's mouth thinned. That is not your decision. No, I said, it's not. But maintenance can mark a booth unsafe until repairs are done. Nobody moves in while I'm fixing it. Lydia turned her face towards the quilts, and for a second I thought she might be angry at me for interfering. Instead, she said softly, I don't want charity. I'm not offering charity. I don't want pity either. I don't have much use for pity. She looked at me like she was deciding whether to believe that. Marlene tapped her clipboard. You have until tomorrow afternoon to appeal the reassignment. After that, the committee finalises the map. Lydia lifted her chin. Then I'll appeal. When Marlene walked away, the red banner stayed on the ground between us like a dare. Lydia folded her arms. I appreciate what you said, Caleb, but I need to be clear. I won't have a man speaking over me. Not Marlene, not you, not anybody. That should have embarrassed me, but instead it made me respect her more. Fair enough, I said. I'll fix boards, lights, and whatever else is actually broken. I can show you where the appeal forms are kept, but every decision is yours. And if I decide to walk away? Then I'll help you carry your quilts to your truck and keep my mouth shut. She studied me for another long second, then nodded once. All right. I spent the rest of that morning tightening the side frame and replacing 2 split braces. Lydia worked beside me, not behind me. She measured the wall space, rehung 1 small quilt with blue stars stitched around the edge, and wrote notes on a yellow pad. Every time I reached for something near her, I asked first. She noticed. Around noon, she handed me a paper cup from the lemonade trailer. Unsweet tea. You look like a man who forgets water exists. I remember once a year, I said, usually during the goat judging. That got the smallest laugh out of her. Small, but real enough to make the booth feel less empty. Before sunrise the next day, I found her already at booth 14, wearing a denim jacket and tying back the canvas flap with a strip of fabric. The fairgrounds smelled like damp straw, coffee, and metal gates warming in the early light. I set 2 paper cups on her folding table and put a small box of spare nails beside them. She glanced at the box. You came prepared. I always come prepared. It's my most boring quality. I don't think boring is the worst thing a man can be. There was weight under that sentence, but she did not explain it, and I did not ask. I fixed the remaining brace while she arranged quilts by colour. Deep reds on the left, soft yellows in the middle, blues near the front where the morning light touched them first. Each one had a small handwritten tag with the pattern name and the year she made it. When the string lights flickered above us, I climbed the ladder and replaced the bad bulbs one by one. By the time the vendors started arriving, the faded blue booth looked less like something waiting to be taken and more like something that had decided to stand up straight again. A woman from the pie stand stopped to admire a quilt with tiny green squares. I was carrying the ladder past her, but I paused and said, Lydia did that border by hand. Took patience I don't have. Lydia shot me a look. I kept moving. Later, when I returned my work cart to the shed, I found the torn canvas cover stitched closed with neat grey thread. The rip had been there for 2 seasons. I had kept saying I would fix it, and never had. Lydia stood in the doorway. "Your cart looked tired." "My cart?" "You too, but the cart complained less." I ran my thumb over the stitches. "You didn't have to do that." She leaned one shoulder against the doorframe. "Neither did you." "That was different. The booth was unsafe." "The canvas was unsafe for your tools."
That is a generous interpretation. Well, it's the one I'm using.
Her voice softened. "You don't have to be useful every second, Caleb." I did not know what to do with that, so I looked down at the repaired canvas like it had answers sewn into it. That evening, after most vendors left, I found Lydia behind the exhibition hall sitting on my chipped bench. She had a quilt square in her lap and a needle between her fingers. The sky was turning orange over the empty livestock pens. "Bench is not much," I said. "It holds," she answered. I sat on the far end, leaving space between us. For a while, the only sounds were flags snapping over the grandstand and somebody hosing down a concession sink. Lydia pulled the needle through the fabric. "Do you know what people say when they come to my booth?" I shook my head. "They say, 'Earl would be so proud you're keeping his booth going.' Or, 'Wasn't it kind of him to let you sell your quilts here all those years?'" Her mouth tightened around the next words. "Earl was kind. He loaded boxes when his back allowed it. He brought me coffee. But he didn't design the quilts. He didn't sit up at midnight ripping out crooked seams. He didn't build that business with his hands." I stayed quiet because she was not asking me to fix that. She folded the quilt square once, carefully. "After he died, people started talking like my work had only mattered because he stood beside it. Like I was the widow of the booth, not the owner of it." I looked toward the fairlights, half of them glowing now because my hands had been there. "My father used to say I was the kind of man people appreciated most when a pipe burst." "That sounds lonely." "It pays steady." That wasn't what I said. I let out a short laugh, but it did not fool either of us. "I guess I got used to being called dependable. Nobody complains about dependable. But sometimes it feels like folks only look for me when something's broken." Lydia's needle rested still in her hand. Then she said, "Maybe we both got mistaken for support beams." I looked at her then, and something in my chest loosened. Not in a dramatic way, more like a knot finally admitting it had been tied too long. The public review happened the next afternoon near the vendor office, which was just a white trailer with a bulletin board and a fan rattling in the window. Marlene stood with her clipboard. A few vendors gathered because small towns can smell conflict faster than rain. The spa vendor, a man named Brent with polished boots, crossed his arms near his red banner. "We are reviewing booth assignments for traffic improvement," Marlene announced. Lydia stood beside her display folder. I stood several feet away with my work radio clipped to my belt, close enough if she wanted help, far enough not to crowd her. Marlene began with numbers, traffic flow, sponsorship value, updated fare identity. Then Brent looked at Lydia's quilts and said, "No offense, but some booths stay because people feel sorry. That's not business." The words landed ugly. Lydia's face went still. I saw her fingers curl around the edge of her folder. I wanted to step in. I wanted to say something sharp enough to make Brent regret his polished boots. But Lydia had told me what she needed. Not a man speaking over her. So I kept my hands at my sides. Lydia opened her folder. "My booth had 43 custom orders last year. I have returning customers from 3 counties. I teach 2 quilting workshops during Fair Week, both full by registration. Marlene blinked. We don't have those figures on file. You didn't ask for them. A couple vendors murmured. Brent shifted his weight. Still, nostalgia can't run a fair. Lydia looked at him, and her voice did not shake. Neither can noise. I nearly smiled. Marlene said the committee would make a final decision by morning. That was all. No apology, no promise, just a delay dressed up as procedure. After everyone scattered, Lydia walked back to booth 14 with her folder pressed to her chest. She did not cry then either. Somehow that hurt worse. I held my ground, she said. You did. So why do I feel like I got smaller? I had no easy answer. Because people can make standing still feel like begging. She looked at me, and for 1 second I thought she might reach for my hand. Instead, she turned back to her quilts. Before dawn the next morning, I came through the vendor gate with my keys and found booth 14 half empty. The blue star quilt was gone. So were the yellow baby quilts and the red wedding ring pattern. Lydia stood behind the table, folding the last of them into a cedar box. My repaired string lights glowed above her like they had not heard the news. She did not look up. I heard 2 women by the restrooms last night. They said Marlene only let me appeal because everyone feels bad for me. I stopped at the front of the booth. Lydia. They said the booth was Earl's legacy, not mine. Her hands kept folding, too carefully. If I stay, I become a town story. Poor Lydia clinging to a place, poor widow with her quilts. On my old maintenance chair beside the booth, she had folded the canvas cover she had repaired for my work cart. Clean, neat, returned. For reasons I did not like admitting, that hurt more than the half-empty booth. You're leaving, I said. I'm choosing not to be displayed. There was no anger in her voice. That made it harder. I nodded because I had promised her choices would be hers. Do you want help carrying the boxes? Her hands paused. No, she whispered. If you help, I might let myself stay for the wrong reason. I stood there with my keys in my hand, feeling like every useful thing about me had been removed. All right, I said. I walked to my shed, shut the door, and sat in the old brown folding chair for the first time in weeks. The repaired canvas cover was still warm from her hands when I picked it up later. I set it over my cart and stared at the stitches until the radio crackled with Marlene's voice calling for maintenance near the vendor office. By 9, the committee had gathered under the awning beside the trailer. Lydia was there, cedar box at her feet, folder in her hands. She had not left after all. I stayed behind the crowd at first. Marlene began. After consideration, we believe a compromise may be best. Mrs. Bell can take a table in the community tent, and the commercial vendor— My name is Lydia Bell, Lydia said. Marlene stopped. Lydia's voice was quiet but clear enough for the first row of vendors to turn. Not Mrs. Earl Bell. Not Earl's widow. Lydia Bell. These are my order forms, my workshop lists, my customer notes, my sketches, and my tax receipts. This booth has my name on the applications for 11 years. She opened the folder and laid the papers on the table. I loved my husband. I miss him every day. But grief did not sew these quilts. I did. No one spoke. I reached behind me, picked up my old maintenance chair and carried it through the crowd. I did not put it in front of Lydia. I did not stand between her and the committee. I placed it beside her booth card. Marlene stared. "Caleb, what are you doing?" "Saving a seat," I said. Lydia turned toward me. I kept my eyes on Marlene because if I looked at Lydia too long, I might say too much. This fair taught me people stay when there's a place for them. You take away Lydia's booth, you don't just move a vendor. You teach good people to leave quietly. Brent muttered. "Maintenance has opinions now?" I looked at him. Maintenance sees what falls apart. A few vendors laughed softly, but I was not trying to be funny. Then Lydia did something I will remember longer than any words I said. She put her hand on the back of my chair, not to lean on it, but to claim it as part of the space. "I am not asking for special treatment," she said. "I am asking for the spot I paid for, earned, and built." Marlene looked at the papers, then at the vendors watching, then at the red banner still rolled near the office. The decision did not become kind. Committees rarely turn warm all at once, but it became practical. Booth 14 stayed Lydia's. The spa vendor was moved near the grandstand where his banner could shout at more people. Marlene called it a traffic adjustment. Lydia called it breathing. That night, after the fair closed, I walked the gravel path, checking trash cans and outlet covers. I expected Lydia's booth to be zipped shut. Instead, the faded blue canvas was open, and the string lights I had repaired glowed soft above the quilts. 2 paper coffee cups sat on the folding table. Lydia was in my old chair. The second chair, a green one from her booth, sat beside her. "You're in my seat," I said. She looked up, almost smiling. "I saved yours." I stood at the edge of the booth, suddenly unsure of my own hands. "I figured you'd be tired of this place by now." I was tired of fighting to be seen. She touched the arm of the brown chair. "Not tired of the place." I stepped inside. The quilts moved slightly in the evening breeze. Somewhere beyond the exhibition hall, a crew was sweeping popcorn off the concrete. The fair smelled like dust, sugar, and rain coming later. Lydia handed me one of the coffee cups. "You disappear after closing." "That's usually when things need fixing." "Not tonight." I sat in the green chair, careful to leave a little space between us. She looked down at her cup. "When you put this chair beside my booth, you didn't make the choice for me." "No." "You made it easier for me to finish making mine." "That was the idea." Her fingers tightened around the paper cup. "I was afraid if I let someone sit beside me again, people would give him credit for the work. Or I would." I waited. She turned toward me. "But you don't make me feel smaller." There are compliments a man knows how to answer. That was not one of them. So I told the truth. "You make me feel like I can sit down and still matter." Her eyes softened then. She reached across the small space between our chairs and offered her hand. I took it. It was not a promise shouted over a crowd. It was not a kiss under fireworks. It was better than that. It was Lydia Bell choosing, with steady hands and tired eyes and no one forcing her, to let me sit beside her after the work was done. The blue booth stayed open a little longer that night. Above us, the repaired string lights glowed over the gravel path. On the folding table, 2 paper coffee cups cooled side by side, and my old chair sat beside Lydia's, like it had finally found the place it was meant to be.